In the forgotten arms of the Orion Spiral, a world called Helion shimmered under 3 pale suns. Its mountains gleamed with crystal veins, its valleys rang with the laughter of Zorathian children, and under the domed cities, life thrived in a gentle, ancient rhythm. But high above, beyond even the furthest satellites, space was twisting. Something monstrous was coming, and even the cosmos itself seemed to shudder. For the Zorathians, the trouble began as whispers trade ships gone missing, silent outposts. Strange metallic echoes returned by their deep space probes. On the eve of their great harvest festival, Governor Ressa called her council together. Worry danced in her golden eyes, though she tried to hide it. "Governor, we've lost contact with our outer colonies. The void relays are failing." "Something is out there," Marshal Kett reported, his scales glimmering with stress. Ressa's hand hovered over the planetary distress beacon. She pressed it, and a pulse raced into the darkness. "To any who hear, this is Helion. An unknown threat approaches. We request aid. Please anyone." But before her plea could even leave the system, the horror began. The Vraxx came screaming. Through the void dot, no one saw their ships arrive. One moment, there was only empty sky. The next, titanic vessels of black alloy and writhing metal, bristling with claws and plasma vents, fell from hyperspace as if torn from another universe. The first cities vanished in silent flashes. Orbital defense platforms melted. Communication towers twisted into burning ruins. Where there had been order, there was now only chaos. Underground alarms wailed, echoing through Helion cities as families scrambled for the deepest tunnels. Above ground, the world burned. Deep beneath the city of Velzorath, Governor Ressa's. Bunkers shook with each bombardment. The council watched, horrified, as sensor screens filled with Vraxx signatures, each one a death sentence moving closer. "How long can we hold?" Someone whispered. "Minutes, if we're lucky," Marshal Kett replied. "Governor, the armories are depleted. There's nowhere left to run." Desperate, Ressa triggered the last ancient distress beacon, a device rumored to be human-made, a relic from a forgotten alliance. She pressed her palm to the scanner, feeling the old machine pulse once, twice, 3 times, then send a single message into the endless dark. Above, in the poisoned sky, the Vraxx fleet opened fire. Drones poured into the tunnels, slicing through barriers as if they were paper. All around, the city screamed a symphony of despair, echoed by the guttural roars of Vraxx warlords. It was in this moment, with extinction at hand, that hope arrived. Every scanner, Zorathian and Vraxx alike, erupted with new readings. The stars themselves seemed to blink as a massive gravitational shadow slid between Helion and the burning void. The ground trembled not from attack, but from the impossible arrival of something older and greater. "Unidentified object detected," whispered the last operational AI, almost reverently. "Massive mass, human configuration, incoming." Through smoke and fire, a new shadow fell. It was vast, more fortress than ship. Its hull scarred by ancient wars, its engines howling with the power of dying stars. Upon its battered surface glimmered the sigil of Earth, an eagle, wings spread, talons clutching lightning. The dreadnought Titan's wrath had arrived. For the first time in 1,000 years, Helion's defenders looked up with hope, not fear. The Vraxx, for all their cruelty, hesitated. On the bridge of Titan's wrath, Captain Jonah Cross stood in the blue light of a dozen flickering screens. His voice was gravel, worn by battles and memories no one else could carry. "Charge all batteries," he ordered, eyes cold with purpose. "We're not just saving Helion," he whispered to himself. "We're reminding the galaxy what it means to call for help and hear humanity answer." As the Vraxx readied their next wave, the old human dreadnought came alive. Its weapons hummed, shields flared, and in that endless second before the first shot, the galaxy itself seemed to pause knowing that history was about to change. The first volley from the Vraxx fleet was a monstrous thing, a storm of molten plasma and black shards that lit the sky in mad colors, carving through Helions. Upper atmosphere, where the beams struck, glassy craters formed, and Vraxx drones swarmed like hungry locusts. But as Titan's wrath surged between the planet and the invaders, everything changed. Shields at maximum, boomed Athena, the ship's ancient AI, her voice a haunting blend of warmth and command. Captain Cross watched the main display flicker with threat markers, hundreds of Vraxx ships, and more emerging from the shadowy folds of the void. The bridge pulsed with tension. Human officers in battered uniforms manned their stations with grim resolve, knowing they might be the last line between survival and extinction. Main batteries target lead Vraxx destroyers. Cross commanded. "Aye, Captain." From Titan's wrath, columns of blue-white plasma arced into the darkness, slicing through the void with impossible precision. 3 Vraxx ships vanished in silence, their twisted hulls erupting in a flash brighter than sunrise. On the ground, Zorathians huddled in their bunkers. Some watched live feeds flickering with static. Others clung to each other in pitch-black fear. In a hospital deep below the city, a little girl asked, "Mother, is that the end?" Her mother squeezed her hand, voice trembling. "No, child, that's hope." But the Vraxx did not retreat. Their mothership, a living thing of black, oily flesh and metal bones, unfurled its wings, unleashing a swarm of reaver pods at Titan's wrath. In moments, the human ship was engulfed, hull crawling with nightmarish creatures that clawed at. Armor, seeking entry points. Athena, reroute power to hull grid. Electromagnetic pulse now. Cross barked. A shimmering wave radiated from Titan's wrath, blasting the reaver pods into sparkling dust. The bridge rocked with the impact of a dozen detonations, but shields held. Below, the Zorathians let out a collective sigh-sum even, wept at the sight of their nightmare burning away. Enemy adapting, Athena warned. Multiple boarding attempts detected. Starboard hangar breach in progress. Captain Cross turned to his first officer, Commander Hall. "Take a Marine. Squad. Seal the breach no matter the cost." Within moments, armored human Marines sprinted through trembling corridors. In the hangar, Vraxx war beasts tore through bulkheads, claws shrieking against metal. Plasma bolts flashed, illuminating the chaos. Sergeant Grant, leading the Marines, bellowed, "For Earth and for Helion." Amid the chaos, a Zorathian Comtech managed to patch into the human frequency. To the Terran ship above. "We see you. We thank you. Please, don't leave us." Cross's jaw tightened. "We're not leaving. Not while you breathe." The Vraxx had deployed ground harvesters' massive spider-like machines that drilled into the crust, sucking out life and leaving only ruin behind. Governor Ressa and Marshal Kett led desperate counterattacks, mining lasers, construction mechs, anything to slow the advance. But it was a losing battle. Suddenly, Athena's voice crackled through. "Governor Ressa, this is Titan's wrath. We have identified your position. Hold fast. Extraction team en route." Above the burning cities, drop pods launched from the dreadnought, streaking through flames. Human Marines landed amid chaos, laying down covering fire as Zorathian civilians scrambled to the rally point. One Zorathian child, seeing the Terran insignia, whispered, "The legends? They're real." Yet even as hope surged, disaster struck the Vraxx flagship's main cannon began to charge, its power readings off the charts. Athena, Vraxx mothership preparing super weapon. If fired, planet's core integrity at risk. Catastrophic destruction imminent. Cross's eyes blazed with resolve. "Then we finish this now. All batteries target the Vraxx main weapon. Fire everything." The skies above Helion burned with the fury of a forgotten species. The fate of a world and perhaps the future of many balanced on the edge of annihilation. The stars outside Helion were on fire. Titan's wrath unleashed its fury batteries blazing, torpedoes screaming, plasma lances cutting gaping wounds. Through the Vraxx armada, every hit shook the cosmos. Every explosion cast new shadows over the burning world. But the Vraxx were relentless. Their mothership Super Weapon, a churning mass of antimatter and synthetic lightning, began to glow, casting a sick green hue over Helion's surface. Even from orbit, Captain Cross could see the land withering, oceans boiling at the edges. Athena's calculations flashed. Impact in 60 seconds predicted planetary core breach. 90% extinction event. Not on my watch. Cross growled. Helm. Bring us between the Super Weapon and Helion. All shields forward. Concentrate fire on that cannon. The dreadnought rumbled as its massive engines strained against the gravity well, swinging directly into the line of fire. Lights dimmed as energy poured into shields and weapons. On the surface, Governor Ressa's comb crackled. Governor, this is Titan's wrath. We are engaging the Vraxx Super Weapon. Take shelter. Hold fast. You are not alone. Beneath the cities, Zorathians, huddled in shelters built for wars they thought would never return. Parents clutched their children. Elders sang songs from before the stars dot in orbit. The Vraxx mothership unleashed its main cannon. The beam struck Titan's wrath's shields with a scream, hurling the dreadnought backward. Armor plates glowed red, then white-hot. The hull creaked. For a moment, everything froze the human ship. A shield between death and life took the full force of apocalypse for strangers it barely knew. But Titan's wrath was built for this, forged by a desperate humanity that refused to break. Shields holding barely, Athena reported, voice glitching. Return fire. Cross shouted that all forward batteries fired at once. Plasma and rail slugs slammed into the Vraxx weapon. Explosions danced along the mothership's hull. The alien cannon flickered, then began to overload. Chain reaction detected, Athena said. Enemy weapon destabilizing. The Vraxx tried to shut it down, but it was too late. Their Super Weapon tore itself apart in a spiral of green fire. Shards of the mothership spun off, crashing into their own fleet, sending a storm of debris into the upper atmosphere. Cheers erupted on every deck of Titan's wrath. Below, Zorathian survivors lifted their heads as the noise faded. A child stared at the sky. The monsters are gone? But the cost was high. Titan's wrath drifted, lights dim, systems flickering as Athena rerouted power to life support and core containment. On the bridge, Cross wiped sweat from his brow. Status? Damage critical in several sections. Shield matrix unstable. Weapons offline for repairs. But we're still here, Captain, Athena replied, proud as emergency teams worked. Cross turned to his comms officer. Get me Governor Ressa. I want her to know we're not finished yet. Below, as dust settled, the Zorathian resistance emerged. Ressa looked up at the battered silhouette of Titan's wrath, scarred, smoking, but unbroken. Open a channel to the human ship, she told Ket. They saved us at a cost. We owe them more than thanks. But then, Marshal Ket's sensors blared. Governor, new VRAXX signatures. They're sending a second wave smaller, but coming straight for the city. Ressa's heart sank. It never ends. Tell the humans we're ready to fight beside them. We'll show the Vraxx that Helion is not theirs to burn. On the dreadnought, Captain Cross heard the report and smiled grimly. Athena, prep all remaining drop pods. Marines and Zorathian fighters joint strike. This is our home now, too. And so, in the ruins of a dying city, two species human and Zorathian stood shoulder to shoulder. Some had never met. Some could barely speak each other's language. But all understood what it meant to defend home, to refuse extinction, to trust a stranger who had become a lifeline dot as the new wave of Vraxx descended nightmare creatures. Drones and berserkers, the defenders braced themselves. The battle for Helion was not over. But now, hope burned bright, forged in the fires of unity. Asterisk smoke still drifted through the broken streets of Helion as the second wave of Vraxx descended from the stars. But the spirit of the defenders, battered but unbroken, was a fire that no darkness could smother. The humans and Zorathians now fought side by side, forming a living barricade across the battered old hydro plant, place that would soon become the last fortress for the survivors of Helion. Sergeant Grant, bloodied but determined, stood atop the fortress wall as Zorathian engineers powered up ancient floodlights, slicing the gloom with beams of hope. Along the barricades, wounded Zorathians and exhausted human marines stood shoulder to shoulder. Every weapon, plasma rifle, railgun, crystal spear was loaded and ready. They had only moments to breathe before the true storm would break. Inside, Governor Ressa moved through the crowd, offering comfort where she could. Stay together. If you feel fear, let it make you strong, she told a trembling Zorathian child. Even as she spoke, the thunder of war beasts echoed closer. Vraxx juggernauts, taller than houses, armored in living metal, flanked by swarms of razor drones. Sergeant Grant called out to Ressa, his voice hoarse but strong. Governor, Captain Cross says Titan's Wrath is still holding in orbit, but their shields are failing. It's up to us to hold this ground until they're back in the fight. Ressa met his gaze, the strange golden light of her eyes fierce. We will stand with you. We fight as one people now, or we die as many. The first Vraxx monster slammed into the barricades. The walls shuddered under its weight, and the defenders unleashed a storm. Railguns flashed, plasma grenades soared, and Zorathian archers fired crystal-tipped arrows. Every time a beast fell, more surged behind it, and every inch of ground was soaked with the blood of both races. Inside the fortress, the injured cried out. Medics Zorathian and human worked, beyond exhaustion, making every bandage and stimulant count. The power grid screamed under the strain, and the air tasted of ozone and despair. High above, on the battered bridge of Titan's Wrath, Captain Cross and Athena fought to restore power. Athena, do we have any drop pods left? Only 3, Captain. Guidance is unreliable. Atmospheric interference is off the charts. Cross growled. Send them. Grant's people need every last ounce of help. On the ground, as the barricades shook with a renewed Vraxx charge, burning streaks lit the sky. The last of Titan's Wrath's drop pods punched through the clouds, bursting open at the fortress edge. Armored marines in battered exosuits leapt into the melee, heavy, weapons blazing. Sergeant Grant grinned through a mask of blood. That's it, boys. We hold them here. Today, we fight for every child in these tunnels, every memory we share. At his side, Ressa drew her ceremonial sword, a symbol of Zorathian unity, and joined the front lines. Her voice carried above the roar. We fight for hope, for tomorrow, for Helion. The lines blurred human and Zorathian, old enemies now fighting as brothers. As more Vraxx beasts crashed into the fortress, a signal came from Athena. Main batteries online, target marked. Sergeant Grant, paint the largest threat. Grant raised a flare gun, targeting the biggest of the Vraxx juggernauts. Athena now. From orbit, a lance of blue-white light stabbed the darkness, vaporizing the monster and sending shockwaves through the ranks of the Vraxx. For a heartbeat, the battlefield fell silent. Then the defenders roared, but just as hope returned, a deep rumble shuddered through the earth. In the depths below the fortress, a forgotten Zorathian vault began to crack. Energy pulsing outward. Something ancient was waking. Sergeant Grant's cum crackled. Grant, this is Ressa. Something's happening below. We have to investigate the... Legend spoke of a Genesis core, a last defense. Maybe now is the time. Grant glanced at the others, then nodded grimly. Marines, with me? If there's a miracle down there, we'll find it. As the defenders above held the line, Grant, Ressa, and Marshal Kett plunged into the darkness below, not knowing if the vault would be their salvation, or the galaxy's next curse. Asterisk below the fortress, ancient Zorathian tunnels spiraled downward, lit by flickering emergency lamps and the eerie blue shimmer leaking from cracks in the old walls. Sergeant Grant led the way, pulse rifle up, boots echoing alongside Marshal Kett and Governor Ressa as they passed generations-old murals images of Zorathian heroes, cosmic storms, and a single strange glyph, a crystal sphere wreathed in fire. The legends were true. Kett whispered as they reached a titanic metal door, its seals marked by warning runes, and the words Genesis Core in both Old Zorathian and unbelievably ancient Earth English. Ressa's claws trembled as she pressed her palm to the activation panel. Lights raced across the door, unlocking mechanisms that had slept for millennia. The air itself seemed to vibrate with hidden power. The doors groaned open, revealing a chamber like the inside of a star, a domed vault of glass and metal, at the center of which floated the Genesis core dot. It was beautiful and terrifying. A crystalline orb, humming with energy, surrounded by a halo of hovering metallic shards. Faded holograms flickered to life, showing a Zorathian scientist from ages past, her face tired but determined. Whoever awakens the core, know this, her voice echoed, ancient and sorrowful. This is our last hope and our last risk. The core can heal, adapt, even fuse the strengths of any who share its field, but such power comes with a price. It draws upon the living will of its defenders. Use it only when extinction stands at the door. Marshal Kett stared at Ressa, eyes wide. This could make us stronger or destroy us all. Grant studied the glowing sphere. It's a Pandora's box, but we're out of time. Above, the fortress trembled as the Vraxx battered the last barricades. Screams and the roar of beasts echoed down into the vault. There was no more time for debate. Activate it. Ressa commanded. The core's crystal surface glowed, casting rippling light across the faces of everyone in the vault. Energy surged, outward in a wave of blue and silver, passing through every living being, human, Zorathian, and even the dying. Wounds knit together in moments. Strength returned to the weak. The defenders above, caught in the energy field, felt their senses heightened. Human and Zorathian battle instincts merge for a fleeting moment. Grant felt 1,000. Memories flicker through his mind. Zorathian strategies, human endurance, shared. Pain, shared hope. Kett gasped, clutching his chest as old wounds closed, and his mind was filled with an alien clarity. Athena's voice came through every cum. Genesis Core has fused your instincts. Fight as one. Use this gift while it lasts. Up above, just as the Vraxx monsters breached the vault's outer doors, the defenders surged as one. Human Marines and Zorathian fighters moved like a single organism, rifles and claws, shields and spears, all synchronized by the core's energy. The Vraxx, unprepared for such unity, broke ranks, monsters falling to a rain of perfectly coordinated attacks. Sergeant Grant, feeling the core's power, led a charge that threw back the Vraxx line. Marshal Kett fought beside him, every movement echoing his own. Even Ressa, now healed, rallied the defenders, her sword flashing blue in the core's light. But the Genesis core was not infinite. Its energy began to dim, the silver glow flickering. The ground shook as the Vraxx mothership above prepared its last, most terrible weapon. We can't hold forever, Grant called out. Ressa locked eyes with him. Then we use the core's last gift to shield the world. We may not survive, but Helion will. Above, on the battered bridge of Titan's Wrath, Athena reported. Massive energy spike from the planet. Vraxx mothership charging super weapon. Cross, we need to act now. Cross's eyes narrowed. Then let's give them everything we've got. All power to main cannon fire on my mark. As the Genesis core pulsed one final time, Ressa, Grant, Ket, and every defender focused their hope and will into the sphere. A blazing shield erupted from the vault, spreading across the city and out into the valleys, a dome of energy born from the sacrifice and unity of two peoples. The Vraxx super weapon fired a howling lance of annihilation, but the shield held. Reflecting the beam back toward the sky dot, at that instant, Titan's Wrath's main cannon roared. A blinding lance of energy pierced the void, striking the Vraxx mothership dead center. In a titanic explosion of black and green fire, the heart of the invaders was shattered. The ground trembled as Vraxx drones and monsters fell lifeless. The Genesis core, now spent, faded to a dull, silent crystal dot in the darkness. The battered survivors realized they were still alive. Sergeant Grant looked at Ressa and Ket, barely able to stand. We did it together. Ressa smiled through tears, hope shining in her eyes for the first time since the invasion began. Asterisk silence fell over Helion. Where once there had been chaos and terror, now there was only the faint humming of the Genesis core as it slowly faded, spent. Above, the Vraxx fleet was burning, shattered by the combined force of Titan's Wrath and the Defender's ultimate sacrifice. The sky, moments ago a storm of fire and death, was now clearing, revealing the battered beauty of the planet beneath Dot inside the fortress. Survivors collapsed to the floor, some weeping, some simply too exhausted to speak. Human Marines and Zorathian fighters looked at one another, battle-scarred and changed forever. In that moment, they were not separate species, but a single family that had bled and triumphed together. Athena's voice echoed gently through every remaining comm. Unit, Vraxx fleet destroyed. Planetary threat neutralized. Rescue operations commencing. You did it. Helion is free. Outside, the doors to the fortress creaked open. The first rays of sunlight in days filtered through the dust and smoke, illuminating the battered defenders. As medics from Titan's Wrath began tending the wounded, children were carried out into the light, their laughter joining the distant song of rebuilding machines. Governor Ressa, flanked by Marshal Ket and Sergeant Grant, looked to the horizon. We have paid a terrible price, she said, her voice raw, but we have won a new dawn for Helion. Not just for Zorathians, but for all who stand for hope. Captain Cross himself came down from Titan's Wrath, his uniform torn, his eyes tired but fierce. He clasped Ressa's hand in both of his. You called for help, and humanity answered. That's what we do. But today, we didn't just save a world. We made a promise to the galaxy. All across the battered city, banners of unity were raised. Human and Zorathian symbols intertwined, the mark of the Genesis core at their center. News spread fast, first across Helion, then, as relays were restored, across the stars. Survivors gathered at the site of the core, where its dull crystal heart still pulsed with faint energy. Children placed flowers, old soldiers saluted, and elders whispered prayers of thanks for a future that only hours ago seemed lost. But the real change was deeper. Doctors soon discovered that those touched by the core's final wave now shared traits. Zorathian children with surprising strength, human Marines with Zorathian reflexes, and both species dreaming the same dreams. Unity was no longer just a word. It was alive in every survivor Dot. As days turned into weeks, Helion began to heal. The ruins of the great city became the foundation for something new: schools and homes built by human hands and Zorathian claws. technology from Earth fusing with the energy wisdom of Zorathian culture. Hybrid children strong, curious, kind played in the streets beneath a sky no longer haunted by Vraxx warships. Titan's Wrath remained in orbit, its scars a badge of honor. Athena worked with Zorathian scientists, sharing knowledge, rebuilding the planetary defenses, and helping map safe paths through the stars for trade and travel. Word of the alliance and victory spread across the galaxy. Worlds that had hidden in fear of the Vraxx now sent envoys to Helion. Alien species long divided by suspicion or history now came together, inspired by the story of a planet saved by unity. On the 10th dawn after the battle, a grand gathering was held at the site of the Genesis core. Survivors from every part of Helion stood with the human Marines and Captain Cross. Ressa addressed them all, her voice steady and proud. We have shown the universe that hope is never truly lost, that the greatest strength is found in those willing to stand together, no matter their origin. Let this day be remembered as the day Helion was not conquered, but reborn. Captain Cross stepped forward, raising a hand in salute. And let it be known, wherever there's a cry for help, humanity will answer. And now we answer not alone, but with the strength of every friend, every ally, every world willing to stand for what's right. The assembled crowd Zorathian, human and many others cheered as the new dawn rose. Somewhere in the background, the Genesis core glimmered, a silent promise for the future out far across the galaxy. Others listened. Some were afraid, some inspired, some determined to join the light. For wherever darkness rises, wherever monsters scream through the void, there will always be those ready to fight. And now, the universe knows, when Earth's dreadnought arrives, no world stands alone. The legend of Helion was just beginning. And the cosmos, for the first time in 1,000 years, dared to hope again.